It's a beautiful day to be here in the orchard. I'm reminded of a day back in February where I had a great opportunity to be in a different orchard, spending the day with a beekeeper, to really see almond pollination from inside the perspective of the hive. When a beekeeper opened it up and you see all those cells in the honeycomb packed with almond pollen, it's a great reminder of how this relationship between almond trees and honeybees is truly one designed by nature. The almond tree evolved over millennia to require cross-pollination, and even the structure of an almond blossom really lures that honeybee in deep into the flower. It's a mutually beneficial relationship, so that honeybee is rewarded with abundant nectar. So research shows that almond pollen provides really high-quality nutrition for bees, and that's borne out by research that shows that hives are stronger coming out of almonds than when they went in. Now, growers make a significant investment in this relationship between almonds and honeybees. Almond pollination is about 15 to 20% of the annual cost of growing almonds. So growers really recognize they need to safeguard that investment. At the industry level, we've invested in tools like Beeware, an app-based technology that allows beekeepers and growers to communicate, to make sure that anything that farmer does to manage their orchard, they can communicate with the beekeeper and make sure those bees are safe. It also means that on an industry level, growers are investing their dollars in research since 1995 that focuses on pollination and honeybee health. A lot of that really is about the 6 to 8 weeks of the year that honeybee hives spend in almond orchards, research to help us identify best management practices to keep those honeybees safe and to achieve a good return on investment for pollination. And decades of that research were behind the Honeybee Best Management Guide that the Almond Board distributes every year. We do a lot of training of growers and professionals that work in the industry to make sure that we get high-level following of these best management practices. So while we focus a lot of our attention on that time when honeybees are present in the orchard, we also recognize that we have the ability, working with national organizations and through the research we fund on honeybee health, to really promote the best outcomes for honeybees throughout the year, the other 10 months when they might be in other crops and in locations throughout the country. We're really excited as well to take our commitment beyond the honeybee to the native pollinators and the biodiversity that is unique here in California. The Almond Board was the founding partner for the development of the California Pollinator Coalition, something that we just launched last month, working with 20 different organizations representing the majority of the farm and ranching acreage here in California, and with a number of great conservation organizations. We're all united on the goal to use our working lands to promote expansion of habitat for California's unique native biodiversity and pollinators. So let's now see how almond grower puts these kinds of practices into action here in the almond orchard. Let's talk with Ben King. Welcome to the session on pollination. I'm here on this beautiful day just outside of Arbuckle to talk with Ben King, who farms almonds in this area. So Ben, you were telling me that your family has been in this area for generations. Can you tell us a little bit more about that history and also about your current farming operation?
Yeah, so my family my great-grandparents came to California on a wagon train in 1860, and this orchard has been in my family since that time period.
That's amazing.
And then for me personally, my father had some health issues and actually passed away when I was 12 years old, and I had older siblings who no longer actually had done their own thing, and I've been basically managing this for now about 50 years.
Wow.
And so
that's fantastic. So what is the size of your orchards, and do you just grow almonds or other crops as well?
So the overall property is around about 640 acres, and we have 350 acres of almonds. And then I also grow pecans, and I have pecans near Colusa, which is where I grew up. and then also an orchard down in Kern County. So I've seen both sides of the state, but my roots are here in Colusa County.
Oh, it's great to be here on such a beautiful day.
Thanks. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so you had the opportunity to work with bees when you were a young man, so it probably formed some of the background on which you think about this relationship between bees and almonds.
Yeah, so I actually worked for a beekeeper, and then my brother became a beekeeper. I also have been in the extracting honey and helped my brother expand colonies and stuff. So I've always had great admiration for bees as a whole. They're just amazing, right? During February, during bloom, it's almost a little bit of heaven. And because there's nothing, I still have those memories working with my brother in the middle of February with the mustard in the orchard on the ground and the almonds in bloom and hearing the birds and the bees actually buzzing. And a lot of times during almond bloom or around spring, I worked for a beekeeper, but then working with my brother in bees, and of course almonds are the first source of food for bees, and so the almonds have always been a very important part of my brother's business, but also my connection and my affinity for bees.
And now you're an almond farmer yourself. What is the kind of relationship you have with your beekeeper, and what are some of the things that you do in your orchard to benefit the bees in addition for the work they do in your almonds?
Right. So the big issue with beekeepers is that they need to find food and forage for them. So, I think almonds, as a grower of almonds, you're actually providing great forage, and that's proven. But also, I know how hard it is for beekeepers to find forage. So almonds is a great way to have food for bees. And then also my relationship with beekeeper is I try to do what I can within the almond orchard, but then also I look to help my orchards provide forage past the almond bloom, whether or not it's in the orchard or other parts of my property, because forage is the key for healthy bees and beekeeping.
So you mentioned two of the researchers that have really informed some of your operations, Dr. Neil Williams and Dr. Amélie Godin, who work on bees and cover crops respectively. They've been great partners of ours as well. We're really excited that we've just released a new guide on cover crop best management practices that they oversaw. It really compiles all the many years of research, but also a lot of grower experience, and things like how to choose the right seed mix, when to plant the cover crop, when to mow, and how to manage that organic matter to get the best benefits for your soil. So we're really excited to capitalize on the kinds of things that you're doing and get that information out to more growers so that they can consider if a cover crop is a good fit for their operation, and then how to get the most out of it. So we're sitting here in this gorgeous cover crop. It's maybe past its the height of the bloom when there were several different things in here, but you can still see you have a diversity of plants to provide different types of forage for honeybees and other pollinators. Tell us a little bit about how you got into cover crops and how you've made this part of your operation throughout your orchards.
Yeah, so I think in California we have basically everything blooms in the spring, and including the nuts we grow and the fruit we grow. But then we have all the native plants like the mustards and grow and stuff. So as an almond grower, I want to use the precipitation that we get it as from in our Mediterranean climate and try to put that best use. And so we want to find the right forage for bees. And so my relationship and how I went about choosing my seed mix was working with Apis M. And that's been a relationship that we've been working with Apis M for about 5-6 years now, and select seed mixes based off what they offer us. So this year we decided to choose a mix that is very diverse, but also provides the forage habitat also.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned at the beginning that you also have a bit of acreage down in Kern County, which is pretty far south from here, and doesn't get as much precipitation in the winter as you do here. Have you had as much success or tried cover crops down there? Because we often hear, it's not one size that fits all for growers, and we're certainly trying to expand recognition of the option, but sometimes Mother Nature doesn't give you the right precipitation in the fall to establish a good cover crop.
Right. So even in Kern County, you can actually get a cover crop. And it last year, the last year, kind of proves the point. The rain did come; it came a little bit later, but I think where everybody realizes it's good to have something, basically have your orchard as with much cover crop or just, as alive as possible in a rows. But, I believe that we're working with UC Davis, we're working towards finding the optimal type of cover crop, and the whole state can balance, the whole state can do their part, but what we can do up here is just so much more because we have so much more precipitation.
Right. You mentioned Project Apis-M, which is, I was fascinated to find out, is a little bit of a spin-off from the Almond Board, started by one of my predecessors who was involved in the pollination research that we funded, and this idea that we could really do our part for honeybees in a bigger way. So Project Apis-M does, as you mentioned, helped you identify this seed mix for cover crops and provide a little guidance on that, but I understand you work with other organizations as well. You've done some hedgerows, for example, to really focus on other kinds of pollinators and other kinds of habitats. So what are some of the other kinds of organizations you work with?
Right, so, of course, with UC Davis, I'm fortunate to be UC Davis grad, and I
Ags!
Yeah, and I really appreciate the support that the Almond Board has given the researchers there, because I have such high respect for the land-grant colleges, but UC Davis in particular. But also in our pecan acreage, we actually are working with the Environmental Defense Fund. And the big issue is, of course, other pollinators, and we're actually trying to provide monarch butterfly habitat. So we're planting hedgerows and trying to get a milkweed mix, but really just provide a pollinator habitat itself, which is a good complement to what the almond industry is doing and what we're doing in cover crops and stuff.
If I recall from one of the other chances I had to come visit with you, you also have some riparian areas that you have allowed natural vegetation to provide a variety of benefits. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we have on this orchard here is right behind us, we have a natural waterway. And then you have all the trees, but then you have the different brushes and stuff. And we have some hedgerows also that we planted some manzanita on this orchard too, off this orchard. But probably more importantly, as a complement to that, is in every riparian area, you're going to have a variety of perennials and annuals that are provide pollinator habitat. So, I feel like what's good for honeybees is good for all pollinators, and one of my favorite pictures, photos all the time, is a mustard plant with a butterfly, a lady beetle, and a honeybee all on at the same time. So that's, to me, is the trifecta.
As you
pollinator.
say.
And
spring can be almost like a little slice of heaven here.
And it all comes, and they all have their different purposes. And so, as somebody who grew up with being with a beekeeper, I just bees are so amazing and how collective they are, and I think they're just good neighbors too. I always see them as kind of the ambassador to nature, because they obviously help us with all our pollination, all the different crops and fruits and stuff, but also they seem to be help us to point how we can actually help nature itself too.
Well, I think it's that kind of attitude and some forward-looking growers like you that have really spurred the Almond Board to be to initiate the California Pollinator Coalition, which is really focused on, just as you've done, expanding habitat for all pollinators, really going beyond honeybees to focus on California's unique pollinator biodiversity by putting in things like hedgerows and riparian areas and cover crops to provide habitat and forage. So hopefully with the coalition, we'll expand the number of growers like yourself who are taking those extra steps to help all pollinators. So you also recently just joined the committee at the Almond Board that oversees our research, which is, I have to say, has been you're a fantastic addition. You really do your homework and bring ideas to us, and from a grower's perspective, but also really appreciate how research can inform how you farm. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about maybe some of the areas where research, you've been able to translate it into the way you farm your almonds here.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to, for me, the opportunity to go to Davis was just as a kid from somebody, a young man growing up in Colusa, being able to go to UC Davis was just a great opportunity. So I had always such high respect for the professors and the staff there. And so when I found out that the Almond Board was collaborating and supporting the research of these primary investigators and stuff, so and also since my brother was a beekeeper, he always talked about the Davis apiary department. So one of the projects was with Neil Williams, who's an apiary, and they came in and actually looked at the competition between the cover crop, the potential competition between cover crop and the bloom, and so we've been supportive of that, and so been working in the apiary department.
Yeah. And I just say that was really important research to get growers to realize that the cover crop wasn't going to compete with the almonds, and to give them confidence that if they planted these cover crops that would bloom, that wouldn't hurt their yields. And that was a really important piece of research. I'm glad to hear growers citing it.
Yeah. Well, and also you just know how hard bees work, but also the other part is that everybody's better off a little diversity in their diet, and
sure.
it makes perfect sense to me that they're going to go and actually be on the mustard and the bloom at the same time. And then from pollen too, you get different type of pollen sources, and so having diversity of pollen is important. So I'm glad that worked out that way as far as the research. But first of all, it takes somebody who thinks that there's an issue, and that's the academic way, but then it takes the funding, and you got to find the right people. So it's it takes the visionary of the Almond Board to actually get that funding approved. Working in committee, I can see that, and then actually find the growers who are doing it, and then finding the right opportunity, the right season, and we're fortunate that actually we had the bloom that year during the same time, so it worked out. So beyond that, I've been working with the soil scientist Amélie Gaudin. What a wonderful group of people, and looking at the issues around organic matter.
That comes with the cover crops.
But then also just soil structure, and I think we're just the beginning of understanding the new frontier of soil, right, and the soil biome, but also how maybe water penetration would be good for the soil, but also good for our water sustainability in the state, keeping the water in the orchard, but just the overall work she's doing. And then I've also had the chance to work with the hydrology department on some groundwater recharge projects. And so, if it's Davis, I'm all ears.
Well, yeah, you talked about the research from Neil Williams, who looked at that competition, and also Amélie Gaudin, who's really been doing quite a lot of research to look at the benefits of cover crops for, as you said, adding soil organic matter that helps with the grower with some practical problems like compaction, driving that equipment through these middles to harvest and to take care of the trees. You tend to compact the soil, and that means the roots don't breathe, but also improve the soil water holding capacity, and also improve that, as you said, microbiome that exists in the soil that helps keep the trees healthy as well, and helps us cycle the nutrients. But both those research were fundamental to something we're really excited about, which is a new cover crop best management guide for growers to really help answer a lot of questions, maybe dispel some myths, but also help them really figure out how to manage the cover crop if they've decided to give it a try. How do they know when to mow it down? How to manage the residues, what species to put in their mix, and so forth. So those are two really good researchers that have been important partners for us in expanding these kind of practices in orchards.
I really think that if you look at as almond growers in the almond industry as stakeholders, I'm super impressed about how kind of progressive and forward-thinking the Almond Board is, and how you can bring people together and different perspectives, but move forward too. And frankly, I think it's all about just telling the story about the good we do, growing food and plant-based protein, but also being stewards of land and sustainability and all these things. Sometimes it's just a matter of how you would name you use.
Right.
And that's, I think, it's my experience that if people really know how it works, it's actually they'd be impressed.
Right, right. Yeah, you know where your food comes from.
Yeah.
And now we can share the story with the broader community.
Yeah, no, I think it's real, as a stakeholder community, I think what you're doing, you know, and I thank you for what you're doing.
Oh,
So,
well, thank you.
yeah.
So you talked about how much you value that relationship with your beekeeper and important that partnership. And that's a real fundamental component of the bee best management practices, is that communication between the grower, any professionals they hire to help manage their crop, and the beekeeper, because that communication is so central to keeping bees safe. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is that the Almond Board is a founding and funding partner of the development of Beware, which is a app-based technology to make it really easy for growers to communicate with beekeepers and make sure that anything that's done on the farm, those bees are kept safe and those beekeepers have advanced knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's great that you're so supportive of the beekeeping industry, and you know, it's as we discussed, it's fundamental to what we do here as almond growers, but nature and the whole agriculture as a whole.
Yeah, and as you said, bees are pretty cool, and I've
really
really enjoyed being able to learn about bees as much as I learned about almonds.
I got to say that bees just amazing.
Amazing organism.
Amazing organism. So,
yeah.
So you have a bee-friendly farming certification sign up on your fence. It's great to have the recognition, but there's more to it than that, right?
There's definitely more to it. I mean, it takes time, it takes resources, it definitely takes a lot of thought, you know, to get everything done and in place that you need to do to get the certification. It's a great way to send a message or let consumers know of what our industry is doing when it comes to bee health. A lot of us are really concerned because we don't exist without bees.
So Matt, how do you keep your bees, your pollinators healthy? What are you doing around the orchard for bees and pollinators?
Well, I think, Tom, that first awareness is critical for people. I think that, you know, the bee is probably the most important thing that exists in our orchard. So
no bees, no trees, right?
No bees, no trees. That's right. Yeah, bee friendly.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, Tom, I think that, you know, that we've really got to stay focused on that. One of the things that Rex DeFore and NCAT has done is that they're talking about hedgerows and building, you know, different environments and pollination sites for bees. I think that's going to be critical. It honestly is the best thing for us is to be aware of the health of bees and how we take care of them. If we don't have them, then there's a problem. But in this cover crop mix that I have, there's forage for those bees as well. So we're taking that into consideration.
So coming in this morning, I couldn't help but notice the huge field of mustard that you have planted. I mean, it's clear you guys like your bees. Can you kind of share a little bit about how you deal with bees, pollination, cover crop, those kind of things?
Absolutely. So we're really fortunate. Very early on, we struck an incredibly strong relationship with a local beekeeper. It was a family business for him. We had an immediate connection, and he was actually the person that came in and did all of our pollination services. About 10 years ago, we started buying our own bees. We started buying bees from Washington and Montana. It became very clear to us that those bees were coming in extraordinarily healthy, and that probably had something to do with their environment. As a result, we decided to be very aggressive with our cover crops, making sure they're highly advantageous to the medicinal qualities necessary by bees. So that's been one really important step that we've taken in partnership with our beekeeper. The other thing that we're doing right now is working with two pioneering companies that actually have monitoring systems for bees. So we've been able to put in sensors that literally are as big as my thumbnail into the hives, and they measure everything from temperature, barometric temperature, sound, They have an accelerometer for measuring the speed of the bees' wings. So we're able to really monitor them and see if there's any distress in the beehives. When we do notice distress, we're more apt to quickly get after it. We have a requeening business with our beekeeper, so we're able to come in, requeen, make that hive healthy again. On a typical basis, we'll have 8 to 10 frames in that hive, which means 8 to 10 more healthy bees to pollinate our crops.
Thanks for joining us in the orchard. We hope you enjoyed learning more about the almond industry's efforts to support healthy pollinator populations. Join us next for the full package, almonds and cardiometabolic health. Throughout these orchard sessions, don't forget to submit your questions for our live Q&A on Wednesday.